I was talking today with someone who is a classic people pleaser, and she lives on constant red alert, making sure everyone around her's okay, all their needs are met. Now, lots of us live in this kind of psychological survival mode, and it isn't about blaming individuals. It's not about labeling people as good or bad, although it's easy to go there. This is about systems. Human systems is my specialty. What I pay attention to are the patterns and power dynamics that we see everywhere in families, in marriages, workplaces, entire systems where people hang out. And how we relate to one another really matters because some people survive by withdrawing from relational responsibility, while others survive by overfunctioning relationally. Transactional people often give off this message, hey, I'm just taking care of myself. And the relational people hear something very different. Well, I have to take care of everything else. And over time, that imbalance, it just isn't sustainable. Something's gonna break. But when it becomes normalized, predictable things start to happen. Relational people burn out and they lose touch with their own needs. Transactional people move through life expecting others to just carry things for them. Empathetic people make excuses until they start to feel moral outrage. And people pleasers sense the unfairness, but they just don't feel safe naming it. These are not character flaws. We're not broken. It's a system problem. Now, I want to be clear. I understand trauma. I understand survival responses, shutdown, avoidance, self-protection, but I no longer excuse relational abdication in my own life. Relational abdication is when someone opts out of emotional or relational responsibility, not because they're cruel, but because emotional discomfort feels intolerable. So they just stay neutral. They stay quiet, they stay out of it, and then someone else carries the cost for them. Usually it's the relational person. The one who tells themselves, oh, I'm just helping them right now. It's just temporary. But over time, it becomes the norm in that system until the system breaks. Now, if you're a relational person, especially if you grew up in a home where emotional needs were ignored or ridiculed, you might have learned to track moods, repair ruptures, and just hold the we together for everyone. Not because you're weak or anything, but because somebody had to do it. And that's where people pleasing developed and intensified over time. Not as a personality flaw, but as a survival strategy in an unequal system. So you learn to anticipate needs, you smooth things over, you absorb the tension, you explain other people's behavior better than they ever could. You know, that kid who seems so mature for their age? Well, that might not be a compliment. That is overperforming emotionally, and it might be a symptom. That eventually turns into people-pleasing later. Over time, this chronic peacemaking erodes our sense of self. What makes this confusing is that many transactional people are not cruel. They may even be ethical or well-intentioned. They're good people. But ethics without empathy becomes transactional. And when one person isn't really participating emotionally in the relationship, it starts to feel one-sided and exhausting. Grace matters, of course. There's always a place for understanding. But understanding someone else's trauma doesn't mean agreeing to disappear for ourselves. Compassion is not tolerance. And understanding them is not being in agreement that they should continue. And this is where people get stuck. They tell themselves, well, if I can explain it, I should be able to endure it. And that belief will burn them out over time. And what I see now in relationships and in the world is what happens when people choose comfort over truth. When it's easier to look away than to get curious, easier to stay quiet than to be honest, easier to protect yourself than take responsibility and be accountable. You don't get rewarded for absorbing chaos. You don't get respected for doing all the work, and you do not get anything back emotionally or practically for pretending that you don't even have needs. You just get more tired. So if you're someone who checks yourself, who worries about your impact on others, who reflects and tries to do the right thing for everyone, and you are feeling exhausted or angry, or guilty for feeling exhausted or angry, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken for wanting reciprocity. You're not too much for expecting engagement from the other person. You are not failing just because you're tired. You have been carrying more than your emotional share, and this is not about becoming harsher. It's about becoming clearer, because clarity is what allows relational people to stop disappearing within that system that would require their silence. And that's where the real conversations begins. We start having confident self-care instead of invisibility. And you should do that because you matter.